I know it's in here somewhere. It couldn't have grown legs and ran off. Wait, yeah. Yeah, here it is. Ah, yeah. There you are, baby. Y'all ever heard of this album? It's really, really good. But hold on, my favorite song's about to play.
This is a Dreamcast disc and is for use only on a Dreamcast unit. Playing this disc on a hi-fi or other audio equipment can cause serious damage to its speakers.
They don't make music like they used to. Oh, speaking of things from the past being of better quality, let's talk about the predecessor to the Xbox. Now, I can hear you already. And to that, I would say you're correct, but I would also ask, what are you doing in my house? Leave. Do you smell something? Have you ever met someone who was boastful and had severe issues with overconfidence? If you have, then you've met someone with the same attitude that Sega had 20 years ago. Let me explain. It was the roaring 90s. Everyone had windbreakers, soap shoes, and that design on the little white cup was everywhere. It was also a strange transitional period where technology was evolving at a rapid rate. Sega wanted to set the bar for their next home console, considering the Sega Saturn flopped hard, and everyone was trading in their 16 bits for 64, because apparently 32 bits wasn't crispy enough. To hold the future in their grubby little hands, they collaborated with a lot of companies to craft the perfect system. And when I say a lot, I mean a lot. Sega didn't only want to participate in the console war, they wanted to wipe the floor with their competition. Needless to say, their ambitions were extremely high for the time. In a lot of ways, Sega was trying to reinvent the wheel when it came to common issues that plagued the gaming market, such as piracy. This led to the creation of their GD-ROM, and as it goes, it went on to be a fruitless endeavor when people realized they could take advantage of the Dreamcast's mill CD functionality. At the time, the GD-ROM wasn't such a bad idea, as Sega didn't think too much about media playback despite PS1 being able to play audio CDs. What bit them in the booty was the release of the PS2D, and that had DVD playback beauty. However, when comparing both consoles' quality, the Dreamcast killed when it came to the visuals, but fell really hard in utility as the PS2 could not only play CDs, but also play DVDs. And considering the price of DVD players at the time, you were getting more bang for your buck. What supplied those better graphics was the integration of the GPU. They had a secret competition between graphics card makers, 3DFX, and VideoLogix systems. They eventually went with VideoLogix. During the time, 3DFX announced public trading and had to disclose who and what they were working with. When their partnership with Sega was revealed, stocks skyrocketed, then immediately did a U-turn as Sega stabbed them in the back and went with VL instead. The thing is, 3DFX was able to produce a slightly cheaper chip with near identical graphical capabilities, but the game developers were more familiar with VideoLogix, which made it the obvious choice. Now Microsoft, the Dreamcast operating system was a modified Windows CE. It also had a port of Windows CE, and it is speculated that Microsoft wanted to produce games for the device. That never came to be. However, that does transition well into the internet. Microsoft was burned by Sony and Nintendo, and as a last resort turned to Sega. Windows dominated the PC market for games at the time, and honestly, if Sega partnered up with Bill Gates, the Xbox probably would have never been created. What fell through was an important meeting between the companies about broadband internet. You see, Microsoft wanted to implement their own pre-Xbox Live onto the console, and Sega wanted to keep using their own SegaNet. Of course, now we see how well Xbox Live did with Halo and other things, but you have to see it from their perspective. Japanese companies didn't often work with outsiders, especially Americans, so when you see a hamburger-eating, freedom-shouting yeehaw man walking through the offices saying they have better internet than you might feel offended. Speaking of offended, that's why EA never produced games for the Dreamcast. EA wanted exclusive rights to produce sports games. Larry and Bernie, which are funny names in my opinion, both CEOs of their respective companies, held a meeting that went so far nowhere that the Dreamcast missed out on a lot of titles titles, including Harry Potter, 007, SimCity, and Medal of Honor, all games the Dreamcast could have handled. Burning that bridge and trying to maintain their current ones after the release of the PS2, Sega desperately tried to keep the console alive. They tried making a DVD player and even a portable MP3 player. To no avail, with little to nothing to offer, Sega ended the official lifespan of the Dreamcast. From that day forward, Sega vowed to only make games and no more consoles to compete with Nintendo and Sony. With the fiery death of the Dreamcast, Microsoft rose from the ashes, as only 8 months later Bill Gates released the original Xbox. Microsoft came into competition with little to nothing, and it's actually impressive how far they got in the race. With their knowledge of computers and software development, they focused on the PC aspect of the console and made sure the online service was even better than Sega's. The Xbox was so promising and salivating to Sega that they came crawling back to them even after dissing their online service years prior. Signing a deal with Microsoft, Sega produced a few games for the system that gave the console sequels to exclusive Sega IPs like Jet Set Radio and Panzer Dragoon, making the original Xbox the heir to the throne left behind by the Dreamcast. But IPs weren't the only thing Sega was sharing with Microsoft. They were also sharing a loss in sales. You see, the original Xbox was losing Microsoft money via production costs. The only reason we still have the dang thing is because Billy Gator has so much money that losing millions is only a drop in his stinky bucket. And the bucket isn't even a bucket, it's actually a big old reservoir. And the reservoir still stinks. After the exclusive contract expired, Sega slowly started to leak games into other consoles. The GameCube, PlayStation, and even Steam saw the likes of Sonic and other fun little IP imps from the system. Only selling software, Sega is actually doing well financially. Everyone makes fun of their defeat, but no matter who wins, Sega will always be there porting Sonic to the victors. However, saying that, the current console war is ramping down to the point where you gotta ask yourself why you even need a console in the first place. Looking at the current generation and even the last generation of consoles, you can argue that the only company making something that isn't PC-like is Nintendo. That is to say, I mean making something purely for the purpose of playing that game. The PS3, PS4, Xbox 360, and Xbox One games usually run pretty fine on PC, you just have to fiddle with the settings and mess with the controller a little bit. Nintendo, however, loves to use motion controls, and the wiggle waggling is a little bit hard to emulate at this point in time. My theory is that after the 2020 release of the new Xbox, they'll form into a games-only company. Currently, Microsoft is not the only company selling hardware at a loss. Sony, Nintendo, and Microsoft are all losing out on hardware production costs. Nintendo even gives incentives to purchase digital copies over physical copies via their Golden Coin reward system. Pair that with the Virtual Console, and it's easy to see that they're pushing for an all-digital market. The discless Xbox One S may seem like a silly idea, especially when it forces you to purchase online games and doesn't rely on physical media. I mean, who in their right mind would pay for something you need an online connection to play and you don't even get to own it? Okay, I do that with my phone and Steam, but I do advocate for websites like Good Old Games, which actually let you download and own games, but I'd rather deal with that than physical media. I do love the nostalgia of pulling out my NES and playing my copy of Mario Brothers, but this busted old thing is hard to play due to low screen resolution, cartridges have to be cleaned, and the controller. Let's just say there's better options. The topic of emulation and filling of original hardware, as well as the whole discussion around Google Stadia, is something to explore in another video. But for now, I will stand by the notion that the Xbox is the Dreamcast 2. Just like the deal they made back in the 2000s, we'll soon get Xbox exclusive games on Steam and even possibly on the Switch with their Xbox Anywhere. As my consoles break down and the discs rot, I'm glad that there are companies producing USB tethered controllers. My Dreamcast might be dead and gone, but here I am, still at my screen playing Sonic Adventure. Only this time it looks a bit sharper. What do you think, Bear? Right upside your head if you keep bringing it up. We'll talk about it after I beat Water Sonic.